Hi, my name is Andrew McLaren. We're going to be talking about when you titrate a weak acid with a weak base at the equivalence point today. These problems are pretty rare on the AP Chem test. You're really going to be much more likely to see a strong base with a weak acid that will pull some of it into its conjugate base. And I'm going to ask you a question. If you struggle with it, I would highly recommend you watch my video on pKa and pKb's and what strength of acids really means. So if you struggle with is the conjugate of a weak base a strong acid, go watch that video. Otherwise, you can stay with me. So we can see right here, I've kind of got in red, we've got this acid, and then in blue, we've got the base. And you can see that this acid has a bigger Ka value than the base that we're mixing with it having a Kb value. So because it's like a less negative number in that -4 right there, that means it's bigger. So this is going to produce more H pluses. It's kind of like it's winning than the base. They're at the equivalence point here, so they have equal amounts of moles of these things, so they have enough stuff to kind of push forward evenly. So that really is just a matter of comparing the Ka and Kb here. And that's how I would justify it. The AP College Board will talk about their conjugates kind of going backwards, which is technically a better way of doing this problem. So to better understand this, you can look at the titration curves and the equivalence points for when you have a weak acid with a strong base, or weak base with a strong acid, or a strong acid and a strong base being titrated together. The easiest one to think about is this bottom one. Their conjugates are very stable, so they're not interacting with H plus and OH. Once these things have dissolved, they're done. So the pH should be about 7 when you've got equal amounts of moles of these acids and bases added. But when you add something like a strong base, you're going to have like the strong base wins, and the strong acid or the weak acid isn't as good of an acid, so some of its conjugate base will kind of leak backwards to form some more of this HA again. So it may have been pushed forward all the way, but the weak base can kind of leak backwards a little bit, and the strong one does not. And so you end up getting the strong base winning in one regard. And so you can think of that as like the pH getting bigger than 7. And then very similar vice versa. If you have a strong acid that's being added to a base, that base will go forward into its conjugate acid and some will leak back to the being the base, right? So that will act as an acid while it turns into base, which will cause the pH to lower. So that's the main idea. And if you're trying to do actual like equation calculations for these problems, the College Board is not likely to give you all these various points to calculate. They're usually going to do half equivalence point and equivalence point. But even if they do that, they're very unlikely to make you calculate for the actual pH at the equivalence point, because the work looks something like this, where you have to push forward all the way into your A minus, figure out how many moles that is, figure out what the new volume is, because you had some acid volume and now you've added some bases volume. I got that from a previous problem. And so now I know my new volume, and you can then get your calculated concentrations and do an ice chart. But it's appropriate to use the reverse conjugate Kb, because this was an acid mixed with a strong base. Now its weak base is going to be going forward and leaking the other way. So you can think about that as an ice chart problem, and just figuring that out, kind of like you would do if it was just A minus being dissolved by itself. So you can consider that to be the initial conditions that we're working in, and then it's going to be making some of the OH minus. And that's kind of why the College Board says how they say it, which is kind of a weird way of saying it. I'll show you. So just showing you where I got these problems. If you just Google AP Chemistry practice tests, you can get all of the old exams. This is the 2021 exam. And so I had the question here. And then I've also got the scoring guidelines and the chief reader rubric report here. And so you can kind of see what they wrote down. And they're talking about the conjugates Kas and KBs being greater so that they go back more, which is more technically correct if you think about what I was saying with the strong acid going forward all the way, and then the weak base kind of leaks back a little bit. So you can think about these things going forward, and then the one that was a weaker base has a stronger acid, so it kind of goes back more, therefore causing those acidic conditions. So that's another way of just stating the same thing and the same relationship. Um, like this one's going to go forward more is the same as saying, oh no, this one's going to go backwards more. But in reality, you're going to see a lot of these moles kind of going forward, and then more of them going back for the weak base because it's got a pretty decent acid, right? That's how I would think about that problem in terms of their explanation, but they should take the other one as well. That being said, be careful because you can't just say the Ka is bigger than the Kb or that the H plus is bigger than the OH. You have to explain that the acid is stronger than the base and therefore it should go further forward. So just be careful. They are saying that they're looking for that amount of it going back, but if you add in a little explanation, you should be fine here. It seems to me they're splitting hairs with the exact points here because it was tricky. Thank you for McLearning with me. Before you go, please check out the following services that I offer with my business. So if you click the link in my videos, this goes to my website. I might be changing it from Podia because I'm no longer doing the interactive videos for sale. I might put those up for free. But most of my other services are linked here. So you can see that I've got like a Teachers Pay Teachers and a Wyzant. The Teachers Pay Teachers has a lot of my assessments that I have for like the NGSS, as well as lessons that I made when I was actually a teacher in the classroom. So I've got quite a few things like CERs and other things on there. If you want to get one-on-one live support from me, either like with science or like working on like teaching support lessons and that kind of stuff, you can sign up through Wyzant. I have a link to there where you can contact me there, and we can schedule hourly appointments. And I've got a few other things on here like a Facebook page and our social media. And if you're interested in getting professional development with me for like a team of teachers, a whole page with information on that. So yeah, feel free to check that out. Thank you.